Why do you think the Ukrainian counteroffensive failed? What is the reason, and in what situation it's Ukraine?
The counter-offensive has failed because not as they used to explain, lack of sufficient weaponry. What they are not mentioned is they are confronted by a very powerful enemy, which is the Russian forces, which have not only diversity in strategies, they are adapting, all the time. And then we have another situation, and that was very well described in the interview that you mentioned it before, of this general serving in a high position in NATO during many years. He mentioned the factor that the Ukrainian army was never really well prepared, fitted for a struggle of these dimensions. Of course, they were trained in Germany, they were trained in the UK, etc. But they were trained, as he pointed out, only in the management. They were thought to operate certain equipment. Could be tanks or artillery, etc. But they never learned, or they didn't have the capacity to be introduced in a tactical operation, how to conduct a combat unit and adapt that in different combat situations. That was said by this German general, and so that is also a reason. They were not prepared as they were announced that they were. At the same pace in which the Russian forces are progressing, it's irreversible military victory. The losing parties in the conflict seems eager to compensate their defeat by means of a number of salacious political maneuvers. They were not prepared. I don't say only the Ukrainians, but their backers, because this is a clear case of a proxy war. So NATO countries, the European Union leaders, which are an appendix of the United States foreign policy, they were themselves convinced that it was going to be an easy game to advance positions towards the frontier of Russia, but they did not assess properly the preparedness, the readiness of the Russian armed forces, and not only the armed forces as such, but also the infrastructure that Russia possesses in terms of their economy, in terms of their financial whereabouts, etc. So they could respond in a fashion that NATO and their allies and the Ukrainian forces, they would never could expect.
Many media have long been saying that Ukrainians counteroffensive failed. How did Ukraine justify it?
Regarding your question, how the situation this moment, well, everybody knows that the counteroffensive has failed completely. And that was recognized even by General Salonsky in an interview he gave to American newspaper. He recognized it. He said, now we are coming to a war of positions. I mean, when you declare that you are entering the phase of positional warship, then you are recognizing that you are not any longer in the offensive. So that was a very clear recognition from the part of Zelensky that the so-called counteroffensive is completely over. And then you have another thing concomitantly with the fact that the Ukrainian forces are advancing some kilometers in certain areas, not on all the front. The Russian army, it's advancing tremendously in quite numbers of areas along the front line. So actually, we have been seeing an offensive of the Russian forces, and very successful indeed.
So, what do you think about this interview? Do you agree with him or not? And what?
Oh yes, Harald Kuyet, he was a former general of the German armed forces, and he was actually chairman of the NATO military committee. Of course, I would agree with the important segments of this interview. And yes, we can review that here. Well, there were no captions in this version I got of the interview, so I will try translating at 9:40 in the video.
Selbstverständlich hätte der Krieg verhindert werden können. Wir haben ja gesehen, Ende
the war could have been prevented.
2021, als sich die
At the
Situation
end of
zuspitzte,
2021,
damals am 17.
when the situation became increasingly tense,
massives,
the essence was to act in accordance with specific events, events that from the Russian point of view threatened the world, affected the interests of Russian security, and that was the essence.
Entwicklungen, die aus russischer Sicht den Frieden
I can
gefährden,
name only two
russische
aspects:
Sicherheitsinteressen
the
betrafen.
question
Und
of
zwar in
Ukraine's
wesentlichen,
accession to
wenn ich nur
NATO,
zwei Aspekte nennen darf,
Ukraine's
die Frage des Beitritts
membership in
der
NATO,
Ukraine
and
zur NATO,
the fate
die
of
NATO
people
Mitgliedschaft der
who
Ukraine.
consider
Das zweite war
themselves
das Schicksal
Russian, or at
der
least
sich als
Russian
Russen
speaking
oder zumindest
citizens
russischsprachige
of
ukrainische
Ukraine
Bürger
who
verstehenden
exist
Menschen
in Donbass.
bestehen. Und
And here, looking back, we can see that the West, I would say some NATO countries, especially the United States, were not ready to talk about this. If there had been dialogue, or at least an attempt would have been made to prevent the war. So that's it. Thank you very much. By Izvestia, or not? Izvestia is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Bye.